Hello and welcome to the B&H Virtual Event Space. We are on the third and final part of the series on short form video for photographers with Jordan Hughes. That's the hat trick, Jordan. What's the goal for today?
Yeah, today we're jumping into some editing. So another very fun part of video is getting into Premiere Pro and showing you how I edit some short form video. So
Yeah. Definitely editing it's the fun part, but it's also the fun part.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. So we've got time for Q&A at the end. Speaking of
Sweet.
which, if you've got any questions for us, please leave them in the YouTube chat and we'll address what we can at the end. Jordan, floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, good times. Yeah, thanks all for hanging with me. I was just, talking with Fred. For me, it's morning time here on the West Coast, so it's been fun to start my day more or less, hanging with you all and talking about video and photo stuff. So, yeah, super fun today. Jumping into, as we said, some editing, workflow stuff, and yeah, just like he said, it's the fun part. It's also the fun part. It's fun to a certain extent of yeah, it's like capturing video is one thing, and then figuring out how to actually put it all together and edit it and communicate whatever you're trying to communicate or highlight. That can also be uh, kind of tough too. Also, just again, coming from a photographer's perspective, uh, trying to jump in and learn another piece of software or another platform can also in itself feel very overwhelming and daunting. And that's why I'm trying to approach a lot of this with short form video, especially where it's like, well, thankfully it is short form. It is stuff that there's pros and cons to that. But yeah, just kind of, I guess the thread I've been keeping throughout these sessions is, yeah, you don't have to master every single aspect of video production, especially with short form video and creating video for social media. It's like sometimes the perfectionist mindset, which I very much have, and I think a lot of us photographers have, sometimes that can be a hindrance when um yes, I think when you're putting video together and you're like, yeah, you have audio, you have visual component, you have color grading, you have all these different pieces. It's easy, again, very much speaking to myself as well. It's easy just to kind of get so bogged down in the details and wanting everything to be perfect before putting it out there or shipping it and saying it's done and post it or whatever. So very much want to try and encourage you all of like, because even today, we have an hour ish, and um, there's only so much we can dive into. Like I want to give you a proper overview of kind of my editing workflow, so you can jump in and get started. But even with this, it's like, I've been doing short form video like this for a number of years now, and there's still stuff that I'm learning and figuring out, especially on the editing side of a lot of these editing programs and stuff. There's it's like Photoshop or Capture One or whatever you use. There's a lot of stuff you can dive into. It doesn't mean you have to master every single detail to do an effective job here. So yeah, so today we're going to jump into the editing, and yeah, just wanted to say another thank you to B&H and Sony for making this happen. And yeah, it's just super fun to get to share more about this stuff, and I hope it's really helpful for you all. So I'll share my screen here in a second. Again, I'm working with Adobe Premiere Pro today. I have some friends or colleagues who they use Final Cut or DaVinci, and there's many different platforms you could, or different software you could roll with for video editing. On a smartphone, we aren't necessarily, again, this is going to be on my desktop here, but um, even easier side, you could also get Premiere, just their mobile app, as well as there's other apps. Like I really like one called InShot, just spelled exactly how it sounds, and that's a mobile editor that you could do on your phone or your tablet. I believe there's both like Apple and Android versions of them. I should double check that, but InShot is one that I highly recommend, and one I I actually still use as well, because sometimes when I'm traveling or just wanting to be quick about getting something out, I will edit on InShot. And that's honestly, even though it's on a mobile device, it's also a very powerful tool and has a lot of similar capabilities to Premiere. There's limitations as well, where it's just not quite as powerful, and there's maybe not as much with color grading and all of that. But great mobile editor. So InShot, check that one out. But yeah, like I said, we'll jump into Premiere here. So let me share my screen, and you should be able to see all that. Cool. Yeah, and if you, I'm sure most people on here have, you've joined us for previous sessions, but just in case, feel free to drop your questions throughout, and then Fred will kind of let me know here at the end, and we can address some of your questions. And yeah, be good to go. So this is Adobe Premiere Pro. Welcome. There's a lot of different things, like I said, we could get into here. This is, just your kind of main editing window. And, there's a lot of different kind of presets for, kind of different kind of collection of different screens, and all of this is very customizable, which is nice, and also a little when you don't really know what you're doing, it's also kind of intimidating, because you're like, I don't really know what windows I need open or what I need to view. So there's a starter option, there's essentials. I created one called vertical, where it just makes kind of my main review screen here, as you'll see in this vertical format. So it's stuff where you can kind of, as you get going, I would say just click, starter. I guess it kind of keeps my vertical format, because I've kind of set up this project already, but this will at least kind of get you started as you're jumping in. And then as you get more comfortable in Premiere, if Premiere is what you're using, you'll start to have a better idea of, okay, I want to move some things around, and maybe make this smaller or whatever. There's all these things of how you want your files to appear and everything. So very customizable, just so you know all that. But with this, I've already kind of imported all of my files and kind of set up my project just to make it a little easier. But yeah, basically when you open the program, of course, you name it and say what you want to import and all of that. So with this kind of project folder over here is kind of where all of your files more or less live. And I just like having everything kind of as organized as possible. Because yeah, basically what you do is you create a bin. And I guess I should back up a little bit here. This window isn't necessarily changing where any of your project files are stored on your computer or on a hard drive. This is just keeping stuff organized within just the Premiere project itself. So if I take something from iPhone footage and I move it over to my FX3 folder, that's not going to change where the file is stored on my hard drive. So that's good to know. If you have your hard drive and all of your files kind of organized very neatly on your hard drive, then you basically need, or I at least recommend, kind of building out these folders or these bins to kind of mirror that, just so you kind of know where stuff is. Because I feel like that's something that's messed up a few of my own students or people I coach, is they're like, oh, well, I'm actually going to move this file into this folder, but that's only moving it within your Premiere project. So seems like a small thing, but important thing to call out. So yeah, and I'm sure some of you, even if we're mostly photographers here, have probably messed somewhat with various, whether it be iMovie or, some sort of video editor. So I'm kind of assuming you've seen a timeline before. So I don't want to go like super, super basic, but I also want to give you enough stuff to understand what you're doing here. So this is your timeline. I'm going to start here. As you can see, I have, these folders of some iPhone footage, like I showed you. You can kind of double click this and get kind of a preview here in your source thing. And some people like to kind of go through and scrub through kind of each file and then start kind of in points and out points of like, okay, I'm going to start my clip from here and then end here and then add that to their timeline. I'm probably a little, I don't know if it's old school or just not fully, not a professional video editor. I just kind of drag stuff in and chop it up as I want here. So um, this here is a little time lapse that I shot on my smartphone. If you were around for the previous sessions, one of the things I mentioned was when I go to shoots, I shoot bar and restaurant, liquor brand photography. So I'm often shooting in bars like this. And oftentimes I just set up my phone on a little tripod and just set it on like a time lapse. So this is just like I don't know how long, maybe 10 minutes or something of shooting a bartender making drinks, me and my assistant kind of shooting. I think he was shooting some like BTS video there actually, and I'm doing photo. So you're getting like this very sped up thing. And that's something I recommend as I've done throughout these sessions of, yeah, just capturing what you're already doing. I think that's a fun way to start with social media video or short form content is showing a little bit of behind the curtain. And this was something we mentioned yesterday as well of kind of figuring out how to start a video and how to, communicate what you want to communicate, but also, make sure, people watch what you're putting out, which is part of the game. It's part of, I guess we haven't really gotten into that too much with these sessions is you kind of have to think through and look at, where you're sharing this video and what's going to be most effective for getting people to watch because they say whoever they are it's like yeah like you have 2 to 3 seconds tops before someone swipes away, so if they aren't kind of interested or find something that kind of hooks them into the video, they're just not going to watch the thing even if it's a short video, which kind of sucks that our attention spans are that short these days. But so what I like to do with basically the style of video I'm making today is like, yeah, kind of sharing a little bit of behind the scenes of me shooting at this bar. But I'm going to start it with this just shot on iPhone, either this time lapse. I think this is all kind of example stuff I dragged in. So yeah. So this is not a time lapse. I'm just going to mute this for now so you don't get um, all the background sound. But something to notice here, you can kind of scrub these and you can kind of zoom in and out of your timeline because this is a pretty long clip. Dear goodness. All right. So yeah, so I can scrub through this. This was kind of like maybe I just didn't put it on time lapse, or maybe this shoot was a few months ago, so I can't remember why I didn't do this, or maybe I'm not even in this clip, so maybe I won't even use that anyway. But there's stuff like that where if you just capture it in normal speed, you can always, speed it up here as well. You can right click, might as well show you, go to speed it up 500% or whatever, and make it more of a time lapse. You could reverse it. But basically, to get back to what I was saying, I'm going to start this video with kind of the shot on iPhone thing because just a lot of social media video now, people are used to really flashy content. I think largely thanks to Instagram the last few years, it's all about having really, nicely curated grids and kind of aspirational content. And I feel like currently, at least time of this live stream or recording, if you're watching it on review, it's like there's kind of been this shift away from that of people want it to feel very real. And I've at least found when I start social media videos with a really nice, highly produced clip, I've had people even comment saying like, oh, I almost swiped away because I thought it was an ad. Like, this is too nice for social media, which is kind of weird and counterintuitive because I'm like, I've built my whole career and brand around this high production value and doing things really well. So it kind of kills me to be like, I have to lower my production value. But again, so basically how I approach it is I like kind of starting a video, something like this with a time lapse, at least kind of the shot on iPhone kind of quick movement of like gets people going like, oh wait, what's going on here? Photographer, bartender, it does draw you in a certain way. I'm not going to just have this run for the whole time, but what I'm going to do, have this start out on my timeline. Again, there's lots of different tools we can get into here. Your main ones are going to be probably this razor tool, which I like just doing. Like a keyboard shortcut is just the letter C. You just go to C, and now my mouse is this razor tool, and that allows you to cut your clips. Then you can press V, and that kind of brings you back to just your normal selection mouse tool. And as you can see, you can kind of hover over these things and see kind of some different tools. We might use some of them, we might not. Again, I'm trying to keep this kind of overview crash course to get you started. But I'm just going to delete that area that I cut there. And then I want this at the very beginning. I'm going to right click kind of that empty space, and that will ripple delete. That just kind of shifts everything over to the start. So yeah, I'll do some of this quickly, try to explain kind of as much as I can here. But yeah, basically like just wanting the start of the video to be, okay, you kind of see me, you see the bartender. I'm going to have that. You can press space bar to play and to stop. I'm going to have, I can see time over here. I'm looking at, probably roughly around 3 seconds. I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to add like music to this, which we'll do in a second. But at least showing, all right, that's going to be the first few seconds of my clip. And then from there, and you can do the cut thing with the razor. You can also like click and drag and shorten stuff, lengthen stuff as you want. Even by cutting that clip, it's not like I'm deleting that or getting rid of that. That's just removing it from the timeline. The data is still there. As you can see, if I want to like pull this out and use more of the clip, it's still there. So that's a good call out as well. So from there, like I said, shot on iPhone, just a little few seconds intro. And then from there, I do want to go into some nicer footage. So this is stuff shot on my FX3. This is where I think I had my buddy Dylan, who often assists for me on these shoots. He'll often second shoot for me if I need him to, or hire him for that. Oftentimes he's setting up lighting and kind of is more of a second set of hands for me. But sometimes he's the BTS guy, and I toss him my FX3 or just another camera body to get some behind the scenes footage so I can create content like this pretty easily. So, so some of this I'll click through on here, get some stuff of, this is, the bartender, lighting a garnish on fire, which is fun. So I'm just kind of scrubbing through this. Very cool shot. He's like tossing cinnamon on a flame, so it makes it kind of explode like that. So that's a cool shot to also throw in there. Also, I should mention, I believe all of these clips we've shot on here are, they're shot on S&Q mode, which is something we mentioned yesterday when we were going through gear and fundamentals. It's not necessarily a shortcut, but it's kind of a nice tool. It's a setting on most Sony cameras where if you set it to, you can shoot just normal video, or you could set it to the S&Q on your Sony camera body, which stands for slow and quick, and it's just going to slow down your footage for you. Now, obviously, I can shoot at something at a higher frame rate, bring it into Premiere, and slow it down like I showed you. Right click and adjust speed to 20% or whatever to slow things down. But it's kind of nice, especially when doing short form video content like this, and you're kind of just wanting to kind of get stuff done quickly and easily. It's kind of nice to just shoot it in S&Q. So all of these clips are already in kind of this smooth slow-mo. Sometimes you still get some motion like you saw there, kind of like this rocky camera look. But for the most part, like you can kind of get this very smooth, kind of buttery slow-mo without having to do much work in post. It's obviously you're going to have much longer clips to scrub through because that's all slowed down. I think these are slowed down 5x because we were shooting at the 120 frames per second. So it's all very, very slow. So, you don't necessarily want to include a super long slow-mo clip because then also people are going to swipe away. So you still have to keep things moving quickly. But I just feel like this makes it, at least for my workflow, a little easier just having clips already slowed down. It kind of cuts out a step for me. Yeah, so I'm just clicking through, seeing what I have here. Looks like we have some shots of the cocktails, some good close-ups of me. Hey, we got a good shot of the Sony camera, even though I don't think we can see Sony on there. Sorry, Sony. Yeah, some of the bartenders. This bar just had a lot of bartenders and staff with just big personalities. You saw the guy lighting the flame, and this guy with the crazy jacket. Usually at the end of the shoot, we're like, hey, let's do something kind of just goofy. I got some good photos of this, I think, of just like a guy lying on the bar and they're just like pouring tequila, two different glasses just to kind of end the shoot and get some just fun, kind of goofy content. So this is fun. Yeah, so I'm just going to start dragging some stuff in. And again, now this was shot on my FX3. So as you can see, long clip, got to clip this down. But also when you see over here, when I drag it in, it's like way zoomed in and, you're seeing kind of pixels, doesn't look particularly great. So yeah, sorry, I just got like a little volume alert. Hopefully I'm good on you guys. Maybe because maybe just something on my end. So anyway, sorry about that. So yeah, when you drag this clip in, like I said, you notice it zoomed in, maybe a little pixelated. With this, that's because I dragged this in first. Typically, when you first drop a file in your timeline, it's going to set up your project according to those settings of that video. So that's a video on my smartphone. I believe it's 1080. So it's like I'm now editing in kind of 1080 HD, and this is a 4K clip. So it's just a much, it's a bigger file. There's more resolution and data there. So if I want this to kind of fit the frame, I want to go over to effects controls here. And this is honestly where I kind of do a lot of work in. So I kind of have this kind of pulled up when I'm kind of cutting through stuff. So with here, you want to go to scale, which is on 100%. And every time you drag to another clip or select another clip, it's going to adjust to whatever that is. So, you have your scale and your position. So here is where I want to adjust this clip from 100% scale to 50%. So I'm putting in 50, tab away, and now it fits the screen. And this kind of goes back to what I was trying to explain in the previous session, where shooting in 4K or just a higher resolution gives you a lot more flexibility in editing. Not just because, oh yeah, like at first glance it's like, oh, it's annoying, I have to go in and adjust the scale, but for this, if we're saying, hey, this is maybe slightly slanted, I don't think that's a huge deal in this clip, but it's like, okay, maybe it's slightly slanted. You can go into rotation, and there's different ways you can actually adjust a dial. I prefer just kind of doing it by numbers here. I might do -1, tab away, and we'll see it just slightly rotates it. I guess I need to go +1. Yeah, so now that's like, okay, that's more more level, but then you see, okay, you're starting to get like these little black bars. I could make this more obvious by scaling out further, where it's like, yeah, you don't want, any black areas on the edge of your frame. So here I could like, all right, I can scale into 55%, get rid of those black bars. We still have plenty, going on here. You can also, again, just with the more flexibility, this probably won't be super clean, but here I'm going to cut this, delete that, ripple delete. So could also use something called keyframes, which is something you'll use pretty often as you get into more video work. We'll use them in kind of different areas, but something you can do here, there's various ways to do this. This is kind of the basic version. You can kind of do like a zoom in. And again, this is because, we could zoom in all the way to 100. I think this shot was probably just shot slightly higher ISO. So it is going to be a little more grainy. So I'm like, maybe I don't want to quite zoom into 100. So maybe not the best example. But basically what I'm saying here is when you're editing with a, you have 4K footage, but you're editing it in HD, you just have more bandwidth to like, yeah, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, and you don't have to worry about losing a lot of resolution versus a clip like this that's already shot at 1080. Well, if I zoom in, it's already at 100% scale. I can't zoom in, I can't zoom out if I want to adjust, the level or whatever. If I zoom out to 50, it's obviously not going to work. So zooming in as well, I'm just stretching out those pixels. So that's where if you can shoot at a higher resolution like 4K, you can do stuff like this where you can adjust it. I like doing just kind of a subtle. I'm gonna clip this a little more here. So I like doing this where you kind of do a little zoom in. I like hitting this button here where you can set keyframes for scale and position. And as you can see, it kind of have this other timeline, and this timeline is specific to the clip that you're have selected. So all of these things can be adjusted specifically on that clip. And when you have these anchor points, that means that it's anchoring these settings. So what I'm going to do is I want it to go from here to here, or let's see, not necessarily when it's, I want to do like kind of a zoom in on the action here. So just like the timeline down here, you can kind of stretch out that timeline, get in a little closer. Maybe I have those points right when the clip starts. And then I want the zoom to zoom in kind of right here. So from there, I'm going to go maybe 80% just to be a little closer in on the action. I'll show you how that works. It's just going kind of a slow zoom. I don't honestly love how that looks. Maybe I'll drag this closer, so it'll be a little faster. Still a little goofy looking to me. I like stuff to move a little quicker. Just keep energy up a bit. So it's kind of just this quick zoom, but it's also kind of off-centered now just because the drink itself isn't super centered. So yeah, let's say I want, and as you can see, if you want to drag that out, that's just going to be a slower zoom. And there's different ways to do this where you can add some different effects to this zoom to have it kind of ease in more. But this is kind of the simple way of doing it. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. But I want to, while I'm on this same anchor point, I want to center this more. So I'm going to go to the position here. And this is where you can you can drag it around manually. I kind of like just putting in actual numbers. I just feel like it's a little easier to position this way. So I'm going to just change the position slightly. I don't want to like lock out the action, but just so it's kind of a little more centered since the drink is kind of off to the side. So now when I play it, it's zooming in right on the action there. Again, it's kind of like this simple animation. You can call it that. I guess it's technically animation. It's zooming in on this clip. And again, that's because we have more resolution to play with here with these kind of higher resolution clips. Yeah, so okay, so here's some footage of me. We can kind of go, because this video is all about me, of course, guys. So I'm going to drag that in, scale it to 50. And that's where stuff like this too, where like, all right, the person filming me taking photos, I actually kind of like how that looks with me standing there in the mirror. But if I'm like, I don't really like how that was composed or cropped or whatever, I can zoom in. I can, reposition this. If I want to see more of the mirror, jump over to that side. I could have it more zoomed in if I want. And kind of go that route. And that's where I just kind of cut through it like this, kind of, again, mainly going between that razor tool and just your standard selection tool. Going C to cut, and I'll, delete that. And I'm pretty often, as you've already seen, kind of going through this, like, starting from the beginning, seeing how that flows. And again, trying to keep things moving, even though I have all of these kind of slow-mo clips, I'm still trying to keep things progressing quickly, just so, again, like I said, like if you just do a really long slow-mo clip, It doesn't actually look that great. Or I mean, I think it looks cool. Slow-mo looks cool, but just like, no one wants to just sit and just watch this kind of like, too long. I like just having really just like a few seconds there. I kind of like getting the flash in there since this video is showing kind of the behind the scenes kind of photo process. I might do this where I have, a few seconds from the clip. I might drag a little further. I think the focus shifts a little bit to those, back drinks there. So I might kind of just use kind of other portions of it, and there's a jump. But I think that looks actually kind of cool for a video like this. Um, and for this, I'm kind of going back and forth between like, to be honest, I actually don't really love the zoom. That's more for example, but at least that helped you understand how to do that. And there's certainly more stuff you can do in here as well of kind of adjusting how you want things to look and creating different movements. But you can get really crazy with these different kind of anchor points or keyframes. And something you can do as well, which I feel like this is worth mentioning. Let me see if I can find. Yeah. So I want to at least kind of show you a few things that you can do throughout this process. But sorry if I'm a little bit of like there's so many cool things I can show you, and I want to make sure I kind of stay on track here because there's a lot of different directions we can go. Yeah, like I said, it gets very fun. It can be tedious, but there's also a lot of fun too. So for this video, I'm kind of going back and forth. I think I got derailed there between kind of like the cocktails, what I'm actually shooting, like the subject matter, and then kind of me doing the shoot. So that's kind of how I approach some of this kind of behind the scenes content, still keeping a focus on the subject. This is maybe something that I create as a bonus for a bar or restaurant client where they hired me to come in to do photos, but I'm like, I kind of create like this social media sizzle reel kind of showing the shoot where they're getting some clips of their bartenders working or just being goofy themselves, as well as kind of like showing the shoot in the process. Let's take this one here where, this is just kind of a fun shot of, them pouring tequila or vodka or whatever, just kind of doing this ridiculous photo. So I'm going to show you speed ramping. So this is another way of using those anchor points or keyframes. I'm going to do it within this timeline. So something you can do, like I said, all of this is very customizable for, dragging things up and adjusting the size. For this clip, I'm going to do a Command plus on Apple, and that kind of extends this little, timeline piece of this clip because I'm going to be kind of working in here. So what I'm going to do is over here to the right, you'll see this little FX icon here, and I like to go to time remapping and speed. And from there, now this kind of horizontal line will adjust the speed of the clip. So this is already shot in S&Q, like I said. So it's shot where it's slowed down 5x from like actual speed. So it's in that slow-mo. So for this, I actually want to speed it up 5x if I want to see it in kind of normal speed. So I'm dragging this up all the way to 5,000%. You can see there. So another thing with S&Q settings is it doesn't capture audio. So you're not going to get audio from this. But this is actually normal speed. Honestly, it looks a little goofy because it's handheld. You have the lights kind of flickering. So it doesn't look awesome, but I'm just going to use kind of, there may be another clip that's a slightly better example of this, but this will at least show you kind of the concept of speed ramping where you can kind of go from normal speed. And then I press the P icon to give you this pen tool. And that allows you to drop this kind of anchor point here. All right. So this anchor point, I'm going to go back to V key to get my pointer. And this is an anchor point that you can kind of split. You can kind of drag it apart like this. And I'll show you why. I'm going to Command Z. So this creates kind of this anchor point on my clip. I'm going to take this back half of the clip and drag it back down to 100%. It's a little funny because this is already a slow-mo clip. So now I have a clip where it's like normal speed and then it goes to slow-mo. All right. So focus is a little funny on this guy's face. So apologize, but this will at least show you how to do this. This is something I like when you're doing something maybe would be cool with that fire shot as well too, or adding in a great ingredient to a cocktail. Anytime there's like this motion that you might want to highlight, this allows you to kind of go just to emphasize that motion in a cool way. What I do here is, this is kind of a very steep drop off where it goes from fast to slow. So speed ramping is kind of dragging these points apart like this, and you create a ramp. So it's going to go. So it kind of eases into it a bit more, and you can drag this out a lot more, make it a much more slower ramp into the slow-mo. So you can kind of drag that around. I also like selecting this, and you kind of have these little points here that you can further drag stuff around. That just allows you, I just kind of rotate that. And again, that just kind of further smooths out your ramp there. So it just gives it more of this smooth ramp into the slow motion. Now it's a little funny here because, again, I mentioned, you kind of have a little camera shake because this was shot handheld, but looks kind of cool going from like, normal speed into slow-mo, and you get some motion of the liquid there. Yeah, so that's just like another thing you can do. For this, I'd usually kind of like, I would speed slow-mo, and then I'd probably ramp out of it, go into another clip. So that's something you'll see in a lot of my kind of cocktail videos of oftentimes it's someone pouring a liquid, which is usually very quick, or dashing bitters, and it's just kind of like, and it's, literally like a second of putting an ingredient in. So oftentimes I like to speed ramp because then you're getting this like quick motion, and then it slows down on like the second dash, and then it speeds out of it, so that's something that's fairly easy that you can apply here as well. So I want to be conscious of our time, just because I know there's lots of stuff we can get into. So I'm going to kind of wrap up a little bit here. This is obviously not a complete video, but I'll kind of show you. I kind of went ahead and created like a quick and easy one where I kind of added a backing clip here. I also added in some stills at the end where I just like, since I am a photographer, I have all these video clips. You can see on this timeline, I dropped in a few stills. And if you go over to effects controls, this one does have like a little zoom out on it. And I'm keeping this pretty quick. I also have a few kind of little transitions where there's like a camera flash and kind of this film burn look. These are all transitions I've gotten from like Artlist or different subscriptions where you can kind of get different kind of fancy transitions or music and stuff like that. So
Jordan,
let's see. I can
voice
turn
of
on
Fred
my
here.
audio, see if my mic picks up. Again,
Oh,
I just
Jordan,
yeah.
voice of Fred. I just wanted to make sure, because we're going to do audio this time around. When you shared, did you happen to click the share computer audio before?
I'm not sure if I did.
So let's stop the share
Oh,
and then try go back into it. And before you hit the share button,
gotcha.
yeah,
Good call. Share sound. All right.
sweet.
Cool. Share my computer audio. All right. I don't know if I should mute my mic or anything, if that would mess it up. But also, like, the sound isn't super essential because it's just a backing track here. But this will at least kind of show you kind of the type of video I kind of would make with this here. Just little disco track kind of fits the vibe of this bar. Kind of jumping between clips. Yeah, and then showing some of the final imagery. Now that goes very quick, of course. Now some of those I might want to like pull out a little more. So I kind of like, again, this kind of gets to a little bit of the strategy, a bit of not dwelling on some of the photos too much, because I also want people to, oh watch this video again. Also just like, yeah, like this is the stuff I'm shooting for the client and I want to highlight it, but also I'm like, part of it is like, yeah, like also check out this bar to see more of this content that I shot for them, more of this imagery. So I don't want to like give them too long of a look at each of these things, but at least kind of some flashes of the end result sort of thing, basically. So yeah, and really this whole video, that is 16 seconds, a little over, So again, I mean, I can click through it again. It's very quick. Try to again, even though it's slow motion, you have all these kind of slow-mo clips. I just like to keep things moving and not dwell on kind of one angle or one shot super long. But again, that kind of depends what you want to highlight, what you're trying to communicate. Not every video I make is only 15, 16 seconds. Sometimes they're closer to 25, 30. But it's always kind of around finding the balance of, how long you want to, make a video, how much people will actually watch and kind of what you're trying to communicate in that amount of time. So yeah, so I know we covered a ton there, and I do want to leave us some time for questions and stuff as well as at least touching on some monetization stuff. I feel like I'm giving you just a ton in this 1 hour, so hopefully you're sticking with me, and you can always watch the replay if I'm going too quick. But yeah, obviously if there's questions, send them through. But also just to at least touch on some of the monetization side, just because I know, a lot of us coming into this as photographers, especially, we're like, yeah, this is maybe a creative outlet for a chunk of us, but also, it's part of our livelihood and business, right? So for me, I'm like with short form video, I'm very much coming into it from the standpoint of, okay, like, I want this to be something that I can either offer to clients or monetize in some way. In general, I don't do a whole lot of monetization on the like, people think about AdSense stuff with YouTube, and I think people see I've had some videos on Instagram or TikTok that have done really well and have gotten several million views, and people are like, "You're probably making tons of money from that." I'm like, nope. Unfortunately, with short form content, the monetization aspect just doesn't work the same as like your typical YouTube long form content does. It's just not structured that way. So I've had a video get 35 million views, and it wasn't a big money thing for me by any means. But for me, the monetization aspect is more of like, um, there's the side of, yeah, offering some short form video services to clients, having it be an add-on, and having it, yeah, very much being a service that I can offer and monetize that way. On the social media side, though, on that level of monetization, like I said, like AdSense, that sort of thing hasn't been very beneficial or profitable. I've seen, but there is benefit in just a few different ways of people. If you have a video that does really well or performs well, you generally do get more eyes on your work and on your content. It usually gets pushed to people who don't follow you or wouldn't have found you otherwise. So there is value in that, of obviously more eyes on your work is helpful. That sometimes can result in potential people hiring you, or it can result more on kind of the side of sponsorships, which I feel like could be its own seminar. Of the sponsorship world is kind of its own crazy wild west. But it's something that I've been able to kind of add on to my photography video business revenue is, yeah, just having some social media videos do well and getting pretty good at it. And now having, various brand clients reaching out to be like, oh, we want to sponsor a video and stuff like that. So that's kind of its own rabbit hole as well. And really quick before we go to questions, there's even just the side of, just oftentimes there's various companies will shoot you a DM and be like, we see you know what you're doing with social media video. Could we hire you to do 5 videos for our account? Kind of what we'd call user generated content, or that's something where you might be surprised, even just starting out, how quickly you'll get potential companies who are all trying to figure out how to do the social media thing. Sometimes those requests aren't worth it. Sometimes there's people who DM you who are like, I have no budget, but could you make me 5 videos? And of course, that's not helpful. But I found even with some of my students of like, yeah, like just starting out with some of this stuff, it didn't necessarily equate to having a ton of followers. Some of them have very small accounts, but just create good videos and they're, slowly building. And I've already had people kind of reach out because just like we're trying to figure this out, every company and business is trying to figure out how to be seen on social media, how to engage on social media, and how to create content that is actually impactful. And oftentimes the answer is finding someone who knows how to do it, or someone they see who's like, oh, like their style really matches what we would want. So again, I apologize. I'm kind of tacking it on here at the end because there's certainly a lot we could cover there, just with the how to monetize video and how to actually make this a revenue stream for you. So that's where I hope you at least stay in touch with, you could DM me on Cocktail Camera, like I said yesterday, Cocktail Camera on Instagram. Always happy to try and answer as many questions as I can. Obviously, if I get spammed in one day, it's a little harder to get through everything, but always happy to help you guys out through some of this stuff because it can be tricky to navigate, especially just my own experience of being very much a commercial photographer and then thinking, oh, now I'm doing some video stuff and now there's social media video and every aspect kind of has its own nuances and challenges to it. So it's helpful to have at least a few people who can kind of help guide you through it. And I'm happy to help out wherever I can. So yeah, with that, we'll see if we have any questions today. And yeah, Fred, I don't know if we got anything on the YouTube side or what,
Well,
but
I've
interested
got
to
some
hear.
questions, definitely. Um, Sorry I made you turn on the audio, but
No, all good. No,
uh,
thank you for catching that.
sometimes, in my very limited editing experience, you know, matching your transitions to the beat,
Oh,
I
right.
find to be really an effective trick for people.
Yeah,
Like so. I thought
totally.
yeah, people should be able to hear what you decided to put on that in that
Yeah,
timeline.
yeah. Yeah, and that's where like yeah, like even with building out when I was kind of going through most of it, I was just kind of showing bits and pieces. Typically, I guess I would kind of it depends on the edit, but sometimes I am kind of like I'm starting with the song and being like, okay, this kind of fits the vibe I'm going for. And yeah, oftentimes I do kind of edit according to the song, like you said, of kind of matching transitions to the beat or yeah, you're switching up clips on a certain
Mhm.
beat so it kind of tracks with that song. So that's always cool. And also kind of a watch out too if you're doing something for a client. That's always the worst when you like submit a video and they're like, I like this, but now I want to change the song. And you're like,
Oh,
well, the
no.
whole video is timed to that song. So you want to make sure, if you are doing this for a client or someone who might have another say in the edit, you want to make sure you have that stuff, agreed upon ahead of time so you don't
Mhm.
mess up a whole edit. So yeah.
Good top tip.
Yeah, totally.
I took a look at InShot.com and it is available for both iOS and Android,
Oh,
and
perfect. Cool.
it looks super easy to try to get started
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
When do you decide to use that versus taking your footage into Premiere?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I feel like it kind of depends how much footage I have from a Sony camera versus my phone.
Mhm.
I feel like if I'm shooting most of the kind of footage on my phone, like the time lapse or just kind of behind the scenes stuff, I'm like, well, it's already on my phone. I'll just pull it into InShot, edit from there. Versus if I'm shooting on my Sony on my A7 IV or my FX3, it's like it's a little more work to like import these pretty high res files, airdrop them to my phone or
Mhm.
tablet. It's just like that ends up being a little harder. So it just doesn't make as much sense kind of workflow wise. So
Mhm.
I guess that's kind of the factor for me. Some videos I'm like, oh, we just shot this mostly on the phone, or um, yeah, just something where most of the content or the files are already on mobile anyway, so it just kind of makes sense.
Mhm.
But there's some stuff too where like on InShot, um, there's a lot of kind of very easy plug and play like AI effects and stuff where it just some things are just make it easy where it's like there's like these cool kind of animated sketches that kind of track with your face or your head and stuff where I try to be more subtle with some of that, but it's like sometimes with something like that, if you know that's not necessarily baked into Premiere, there's probably some plugin you can get. I don't know, but
Mhm.
sometimes I'll edit in Premiere and kind of have everything cut and matched up, and then I'll pull it into mobile and on InShot, and maybe I'll add a few extra things from there. InShot also has a pretty decent like sound effects library. Now I've kind of built up my own sound effects library on my own stuff, but if you don't have that or whatever, InShot just has a lot of great sound effects just built into the app that are just like no extra fee sort of thing. So that's kind of
Nice.
nice too. Where it's just like cool, like you can pull in some, they have them all categorized and they're just drag and drop. So there's just kind of pros and cons to each thing, and it kind of just depends what you're doing and where most of those files live already. So
Yeah, it sounds like either how tedious or how deep do you have to go with the
right,
project.
yeah, yeah, totally.
I'd say when I'm watching content on my phone, at least 50% of the time it's set to silent because I'm like watching it on the train or I'm
Sure, yeah,
not
that's
watching
a
it at
good
work
point.
because I work very hard. But
Yeah,
you know, but is there any rule of thumb for incorporating text into the videos? Like I've noticed a lot of like, if you're not hearing it, maybe you'll get the description above it or you'll get the
right,
narrative of what someone's talking about directly on the video.
right. Yeah, typically like if there is speaking of some kind, like yeah, like having subtitles is kind of essential. But with that, it's like most editing software now has, auto-generated captions.
Hmm.
Um, I know InShot does a great job of that as well, of kind of auto-generate, and you can very customize the text. But honestly, most platforms now, it's like you upload it and like it will auto apply captions for you. But with those, you can't always edit them. So, but with the video like the one I showed you, where it's like there's no one like talking, I probably would consider adding some text because, like you said, like so many people are going to watch it without the music or without sound. Um, so I would probably typically do something of like, I do try to think of text as part of the hook as well, as how we were
Hmm.
talking about having those first few seconds of the time lapse and trying to draw people in. I probably would try to think of some way of like, um, sometimes it's like a question of like, uh, I try to make it very specific to the video of something of like, you ever wondered what a bar photo shoot looked like, or
Hmm.
something where it's like posing a question or trying to think of a way to kind of pique someone's interest to get them to watch the rest of the video. That it gets kind of a weird balance because you don't like you want to be kind of clickbaity, but you also don't want to be, you want to deliver too. You don't want to be
Yeah.
like,
You
set
want to
someone up
be
for disappointment.
you
um,
want to you want to set them up, but you're not
yeah.
trying to put one over on them. You're just trying
Right.
to
Yeah. But there is kind of this level of like, how can you word something versus just being like, I could just put photo shoot at, Decibel Bar in Portland. Just put the info. It's like, that's one route. But it's like, I don't know if that necessarily draws people in.
Hmm.
You kind of want people to be asking questions. And that's where I was kind of like not dwelling on the final photos very long. It's like I do want people to see what I do, but also like I want them to ask questions. I want them to engage with the post. I want them to maybe rewatch it and see if they can catch other details. So there kind of is this like tug of war of like, yeah, you want to give them the info, you want to use text and make sure they know what's going on, but you also want to figure out how to like hold some stuff back too and keep them coming back for more. So that's a little bit of the tug of war or the dance of it. So
Yeah, I mean it's photo composition. How do you make
yeah.
someone just travel around and back into the photos so that they're not lost in it but captivated by it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of text, here's sort of an analogy. So, unless you're making Avatar Part 5 and no one is using the papyrus font, I hope,
Right.
or Comic Sans, because sorry if the analogy was a little judgmental, but do you think there are any video tricks that have at least like 2025 current worn out their stay, like
Hmm.
Star Wars swipe or or the diamond swipe, or
Yeah.
any like old tricks that you're like, maybe steer clear for now?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Um, yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff. Yeah, I feel like it's a little tricky for me because I'm like I kind of just live and breathe a lot of this stuff. So it's just kind of
Mm,
like I'm constantly kind of changing my editing style or updating it slightly. Um, I think there is a level of maybe some of the stuff we touched on briefly of even how I was talking about like, yeah, all this stuff is shot in slow-mo, but you still want to keep it moving.
yeah.
Um, I think that's maybe not necessarily 2025, but just kind of like a just overall of just like I think a lot of times when people start out, they kind of go like, "Oh, this is so cool what I can do here." And like I can do this slow-mo shot or I can do this cool transition. And I think it's something where now I'm like I can kind of see if someone's I don't want to sound like a dick necessarily, but like there's like you can almost see when someone's new and they're like they've just discovered editing because they're doing all the things. They're doing all the slow-mo and all the flashy transitions
Hmm.
and it's like your edit should enhance the video, the story, whatever you're trying to communicate. It shouldn't be like it shouldn't distract from it. If you watch a video and
Gotcha.
go, "Hey, cool edit," I'm like, "Thanks," but that's a bummer that's what you
Yeah.
think of as cool edit. When I was like that, that's not what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
Similar with a photo, we're like, oh, cool edit. I love how those oranges and blues are turned up really high. It's like,
Yeah.
well, really what they're saying is you overdid it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah, so that's where I'm like, I guess I don't necessarily have a super specific thing of stay away from this, but more of just like I guess overall just showing restraint and
Hmm.
being like, if it doesn't make sense to have a bunch of slow-mo clips for what you shoot, then don't have a bunch of slow-mo
Yeah.
clips or don't use even just transitions in general. It's like uh yeah, it's like you don't want to just go over the top with all these swipes and animations and
Yeah.
what because then it's like anyone watching that is going to be get me off this roller coaster, please. So it's more of kind of an overall of just like trying to be intentional with your edit. And I'm like, even if something is like, oh, even mentioning you know, the orange blue edit, like, yeah, there's stuff like that where it's like, that's kind of overdone, but it's like,
Yeah.
but if you can use it well, and if it works for what you're trying to communicate, go for it. It's
Nice.
more about the intentionality behind it versus like, this isn't cool anymore versus this is
Yeah.
because it's like it's all about just how you use it. So
It sounds
it's
it
my
sounds
take.
like it sounds like don't let the message get lost to technique. Like,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, where it's like, and I get it. It's like, especially with more and more cool, like I mentioned, the AI effects, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do, and you can do it, easier and easier these days. So I'm like, I find myself being like, oh, I'm gonna throw in this cool AI thing, but I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
is this just gonna be weird? Or is this gonna
I've
distract people?
gone
So
I've
yeah,
gone a step too far.
yeah,
Roll
yeah.
that back.
Who have we become?
Well, as I'm sure you're well aware, part of the editing process for photographers is culling out the extra or subpar images. Is
Hey,
there a culling process with video footage, or is it all usable in one way or another?
yeah, there definitely is. Yeah, and yeah, most of the clips I was pulling through there, like I kind of did a quick culling process of just like, oh, these could be some good examples, and I was trying to have everything shot at one bar that I could use. So, yeah, there's definitely a bit of a process of just like uh yeah, and it very much depends on your project as well and what you want to use versus not. For me, I'm like I'm often again for the type of stuff I showed, often using an assistant who's helping me on shoots, also capture some behind the scenes stuff. So
Mhm.
that's also been a matter of kind of like communication between him and I and being like, hey, I don't need 10 different clips of this one cocktail. This content's mainly going to be used for my social media content. So like yeah, we want to highlight the subject and what we're capturing, but it's more of kind of like my communication with him of like not overshooting because I just don't need all of this tons of data of just shooting the same
Mhm.
thing from different angles. Now that we've shot together a lot, I feel like we're a little more in sync where I don't feel like I have to do as much kind of culling or cutting through stuff because I was like, cool,
Cool.
he kind of knows what's usable for me. And but I feel like with video too, it's stuff where I try not to be too quick with cutting a clip or trashing something because sometimes yeah you capture something and you'll like get, oh, those last few seconds are actually kind
Mm.
of cool, so that's where it's,
Yeah.
I do feel like it's a little harder because you could just look at thumbnails and be like, nah. But unless you kind of scrub through the whole thing, you might miss a little nugget that could be really cool. So that's another one, I guess, where it's like, yeah, show some restraint with that too, just because obviously it can be time consuming, especially if you have a ton of clips. But
Mm.
just knowing even a clip that isn't ideal, you might catch something or have something in there that could be really great. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Jordan, it's that time. Thank you
Hey,
very much for putting all of this together for us.
hey, yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been super fun. So I really appreciate it.
And who can forget Sony for sponsoring the whole kit
Hey,
and caboodle? So big
yes,
thanks to them.
yeah, totally. And, hey, I didn't even call it out. It's like I've been using a Sony mic this whole time, so it's
Oh,
just
hey.
I'm all in. So wasn't even intentional. It's just like, oh yeah,
Great way to cap it off. Full
yeah,
Sony
totally,
setup. Nice.
yeah.
All right, everybody, if you missed parts 1 or 2, there's a lot of little gems for newbies and refreshers for those that have already started their video journey. So check out the links in the chat. Or if you want to rewatch this or any other educational content from us, be sure to check out the BH Event Space YouTube channel. Jordan, any parting words before we close this one out?
Hey, yeah, just another thank you, and yeah, like I've already said, feel free to DM me or message me if there's questions that come up. Same for anyone on watching the replay. I'm pretty active on Instagram and responding to questions and messages. So yeah, feel free to slide into the inbox and let me know if I can help you with anything. So
Awesome. All
yeah,
right. Well, we all thank you for that. And with that, this has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Everybody, enjoy your day.
awesome.